I do want to give our presenters as much time as we possibly can so that they can give you all the content that they've got prepared for us. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Implementation of RAP Co-Facilitation and Evidence-Based Practice, Promising Activation of Personal Self-Agency for Improved Individual Health Care. So before we get started and I introduce our panelists today, just a couple of very quick housekeeping things. The first is that today's webinar is being recorded, and the webinar recording as well as the PowerPoints will be posted on the NIAPRS website, likely by the end of the week, if not Friday, by Monday or Tuesday. So just give us a few days to upload that information to our website should you want to come back and reference it or download the PowerPoints for future reference. We will also be sending out an evaluation to all of the participants via email. So the email that you registered for today's event with is the email that you'll receive your evaluation at. So the email, the evaluation is really important. We send out evaluations for two reasons. One is, we're always asking for feedback and trying to improve ourselves. So we hope that you'll give us some honest feedback about today's webinar. The second is for purposes of continuing ed units. So we're offering CEU credits to LMSWs, LCSWs, CPRPs, and LMHCs for today's webinar. So it's 1.25 CEUs for today's webinar. If you are interested in receiving the CEUs, it's really important that you send the evaluation back to NIAPRS within a week of receiving it. That's the only way that we can process it, is if we receive your evaluation. And make sure on your evaluation you check off which CEU you're looking for, whether it's LMSW, LCSW, CPRP, or LMHC. We also ask that you be kind to us and give us about 45 days to process your CEUs. We've been doing lots of webinars. We do about 4 webinars a month, sometimes more depending on what's going on during that month, and we have literally thousands of CEUs to process every month. So we ask that you be a little kind with us and give us about 45 days to give you your CEUs back, to give you your CEU certificate. So the last thing to quickly review before we get into the content is the chat box, and I see that you folks are like chat box like divas and Devos, I guess. But you guys are really good at using the chat box. Everybody's using the chat box already, saying that they're here today, connecting with each other. We want you to absolutely use the chat box to connect with each other. We also want you to use the chat box to connect with our presenters. There's going to be several opportunities for the questions to be answered using the chat box today, so we want you to do that. We also want you to ask any questions of our presenters that might come up. If they come up, and we have a little time to actually ask them during the webinar, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll hold them until the end of the webinar, and we have set some time aside at the end of the webinar to answer your questions. So feel free to use that chat box and type away. Okay, so with that being said, let's go to the next slide so that I can introduce our presenters. So we've got Waynette Brock and Matthew Federici from the Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery. Waynette is the National Advanced RAP Co-Facilitator and the National Director of Training, and Matt is the Executive Director. And we also have Kristen King, who is from Advocates for Human Potential, and she is their Virtual Solutions Manager and RAP Project Manager. So with that, I just want to say welcome to all our presenters. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks for all of you to be with us today. I'll turn it over to you, Matt, to kick us off.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you to NIAPRS for inviting the Copeland Center and AHP to work together on this presentation for you. And thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I'm being joined by my esteemed and colleagues and friends. Good morning, Kristen. Good morning, Waynette. They're coming in from a different time zone there. So today's webinar is being presented on the implementation of the evidence-based practice of RAP co-facilitation. I am the executive director at the Copeland Center for Wellness and Recovery, and our mission is to promote personal, organizational, and community wellness and empowerment through education, training, and research. And we do this worldwide, although we are a 501c3 nonprofit in the United States of America. So that's our primary focus. We are a international peer-run organization, which means that we are disclosing intentionally our lived experience in mental health recovery, both on the board and our team. We've been in since 2005. We actually were formed before we were incorporated as early as 2003 through our founder, Mary Ellen Copeland. We have, at this point, trained and certified over 10,000 co-facilitators worldwide to offer an evidence-based peer group model called WRAP. We develop curriculums and education by people in recovery, for people in recovery and their families and people who care about them. WRAP kind of an outgrowth you'll hear a little bit more of from our founder, Mary Ellen Copeland, is kind of our landmark, our hallmark program. But our overarching mission is to advance education and empowerment and transform communities, both individually and communities, towards recovery and wellness. So anyone can join a member of the Copeland Center. We are building a grassroots community of peer support. It's through our membership that we offer webinars like this and other opportunities, particularly online, to connect. For example, like we have a Wellness Wednesday, and what's really great about that, Waynette is our primary facilitator of that. What's really great about that is that we literally have people who are peers in wellness from Pakistan, Japan, England, Canada, all of 50 states. So it's a really wonderful, diverse community of people who are all connecting as people for wellness. So that's a little bit about who we are. So we're here today to talk specifically, though, about the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. That's what WRAP stands for. The WRAP curriculum and co-facilitated practice was developed by a group of people who have been dealing with difficult feelings and behaviors for many years, people working together to feel better and get on with their lives. What is known as WRAP today was conceived by these groups of peers in Vermont in 1997 under the primary leadership of Mary Ellen Copeland, and you'll hear a little bit about that today. So that's what WRAP is, although you're going to hear about how wildly successful and scientifically successful WRAP has been for recovery from significant mental health challenges. I want to underscore that these peers that came together and developed this, they have been whole individuals who come from a whole life perspective. They never really solely identified with just an identity and issues of mental illness per se. This evolved out of people who, although it may have met the criteria socially for that, they worked together as people and came from a whole health perspective. So the Copeland Center's relationship, as I kind of alluded to this, is we've kind of continued this mutual learning of people coming together saying, how can we get well and stay well for as long as possible? In particular, as Mary Ellen successfully started off kind of on a grassroots level with her peers doing workshops, the work grew so wildly that they created the peer-run nonprofit to continue the traditions and the values that WRAP came out of, which is a mutual learning process. And that's what we work to do. And we've codified a network and certification through WRAP co-facilitation and advanced level WRAP co-facilitation, validated by scientific research. I would say probably the most notable research around a peer support intervention. So we're committed to that process and those values. And in about 2017, Mary Ellen Copeland, who had started to publish her books and create her own little publishing company to sustain the materials that supported this process, as she retired, she sold her works to Advocates for Human Potential, who had been in operation for quite some time and been successful in developing and distributing materials and toolkits. So the Copeland Center became a licensed strategic partner of AHP to continue to provide the trainings and certifications. AHP owns and operates WRAP and recovery books, which you can still access all the materials and their continually improving and expanding that knowledge base with, we play a role as a content developer with them. But rapandrecoverybooks.com is where a lot of the stuff you're going to hear today, if you want to do a lot more personal, deeper dive into the work, you can find loads of books there. Yeah, that's where Kristen's coming from. So she's a great contact there if you want more information about materials and books. From here, I'm going to hand it off to my esteemed colleagues and friends. In particular, Kristen's going to talk a little bit more now. We're going to get into, so what is RAP and what does it mean for it to be evidence-based? Kristen?
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. So as Matthew mentioned, I'm from Advocates for Human Potential, and I'm also one of those 10,000 co-facilitators that have been trained and certified by the Copeland Center to support RAP groups. And so let's talk about what RAP is. Who could use RAP? Well, RAP is really for anyone who wants to create a positive change in how they feel or just increase their enjoyment in life. A lot of the folks who use RAP are doing it because they want to achieve wellness regardless of what's going on. They may be people like me who experience deep sadness or anxiety, like feelings of anxiety or something that I live with, and that's something that I use RAP to support me through. But it can also be things like arthritis or other types of chronic pain, addictions or dependencies, experiences like hearing voices, big life transitions like losing a job or losing housing. It could be chronic health conditions like diabetes or even the experience of burnout. A lot of people could also use RAP for like big life changes. Like I used it when I moved cross country with 2 little kids. That was exciting. So there's lots of ways that you can apply it. And Matthew, why don't you go ahead to the next slide? And so, you know, we come together to use RAP in a peer group setting. And so the seminars, concepts, and skills that you discover through the course of creating a RAP, which is a collection of plans that you use throughout your daily life, that process happens in this group setting. And there are lots of different ways that you can combine those pieces together. And so one of the ways that we can think about how we might build and use our RAP is to think about what we hope for in our wellness today. And so we'd love to hear from you in the chat box. Go ahead and type in the chat box, what are you hoping for your wellness today? And while you're working on typing that in, I would love to hear from my co-facilitators today, Matthew and Waynette, what you all are hoping for your own wellness. Matthew, what about you?
I love this question because this demonstrates for me how much my RAP has changed in the last 15 years that I've been doing this. And today, given the whole nature of everything going on right now, working from home, and for me, I hope for my wellness today that I remain focused on the work projects that I have, so that I can disconnect enough to be present in my home and not just be working all into the hours of night. So, so I guess you would call it like a work-home balance, is what I hope for my wellness today.
Thanks, Matthew. What about you, Waynette?
Matthew stole mine. So, right? It's like, so yeah, I'm always seeking to maintain balance and serenity in my life, and what that looks like in, you know, with current events and being in front of the screen a lot and stuff. And so, yeah, I'm learning to close this office door. Like at 8 o'clock when I'm off, it's like I just close this door and divorce myself from technology. And that contributes to my wellness today. So, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Waynette. And I'm hearing a lot of similar thoughts in the chat box. Lots of folks are hoping for balance, increased focus, being present, a sense of calmness, just having like a more like kind of even keel as they go through their day, time management. There's a lot here about spirituality. So I think we're all in a similar place. And one of the things that's really neat about RAP is that when we come together in community as part of this larger RAP community, and as we're participating in RAP groups, we get to share these experiences with each other. And I really enjoy being connected to others by seeing that we're sharing similar things. I also really enjoy learning from the things that other people share that maybe I hadn't thought of, because it gives me ideas. and things that I might want to try or that I might want to focus on for my wellness. So thank you all so much for sharing. Matthew, let's go ahead on to the next slide. So as Matthew mentioned, RAP is an evidence-based practice. And so for those who are unfamiliar with the term, it basically means that it's an intervention or a tool that was designed to be used in a certain way. And when we talk a little bit about outcomes later, those outcomes are based on the tool being used in the way that it was designed. And so the first thing that we do was, as we're learning about RAP and as we're going through the evidence-based practice of RAP, is we take a look at what are the 4 parts of the study of mental health recovery. So we begin with the 5 key concepts of RAP, which are hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support. And those are like those foundational concepts that come through every part of RAP. So we start with taking a look at what those are and what they mean for us individually. And then as we build our actual collection of plans, we look at how we want to incorporate those concepts into our everyday life. So we begin with the Wellness Toolbox, which is the next layer of foundation on which we build RAP. And wellness tools are those things that we do. They can be free, inexpensive, simple, safe activities or strategies or things that we use or do that help us to feel well, that help us to get back to wellness when we're not feeling great. And I like to think of them as things that just help me be more of who I am. So I'm curious to hear from you all. What are some wellness tools that you enjoy? One of the ones that I really enjoy is petting my cat, who is really determined to be part of this webinar. So this is Batman. And having that relationship with my animals is really, really important to me. And, you know, when we identify what our wellness tools are, we use those later to build the different parts of our plan. And Matthew, thank you. I kind of jumped ahead a little bit to a slide, so thanks for following me. So, you know, you all are sharing what are some of those wellness tools for you. And this is a list you can add to at any time, and you'll incorporate this into different parts of your plan. So, you know, many of you are sharing tools. Yep, so lots of folks, dogs and cats, specific types of exercise, hiking, yoga. We have some hobbies like music, baking, cooking, listening to meditative podcasts. That's something I want to add to my list. Lots of great ideas in here. And if you haven't already shared one that's in this category, what's a wellness tool that gives you hope? What's a tool that helps you feel more hopeful? Wait, Nat, what's a tool that helps you feel more hopeful? Would you like to share one?
Oh, sorry, I was reading everything in the chat. That's a wellness tool that helps me feel more hopeful.
Right? Connecting with others, totally.
Yeah, connecting with others, inviting different perspectives into my life helps me. Yeah.
Thanks, Weena. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, for me, you know, there's a lot of different things. Well, early in the morning, which are always rough for me. Sometimes they say people with depression, you know, that can be the case, and maybe that's why, I don't know. I just know that mornings are hard for me, always have been. But a good cup of coffee, grinding those beans, smelling the coffee, drinking that coffee. Sometimes if I just don't think about the whole day when I wake up, I just think about that cup of coffee, it gives me hope. Like, just start there. More longer range, sometimes having plans with friends or a vacation planned, or that gives me hope when I'm going through day-to-day stuff of responsibilities that are not so much fun and can feel a little daunting. Looking forward to like a vacation or getting together with a good friend and doing like something fun like Frisbee or something is what gives me hope, like to get through where I'm at currently.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I had a real wellness connection with that idea of having something to look forward to, even if it's just that cup of coffee and you don't have to worry about what comes after, is a really nice way to feel hopeful. I really, really relate to that. And I'm seeing lots of thoughts in the chat here. Folks are sharing about gratitude. We've got some tea lovers in the group, listening to music. Taking some positive action can create a sense of hopefulness. Really great shares in here. Thank you all so much for your generosity and your vulnerability with sharing. Matthew, can we go back just one slide? Let's talk about what RAP actually is so we can put these tools in context. And then, Waynette, I'm going to pass it off to you in just another minute here. So I just want to give you a heads up. So when we create a RAP, so RAP stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan. But if we're being honest about it, it's a bunch of plans, right? And then we kind of put them all together in this bigger plan. And so when we focus on RAP, we're really looking at what I can do that has been working for me, and also what I might like to try that I think could work for me. We're looking at how I support myself in certain circumstances. We're identifying what are the strengths and the sense of power that we bring to the table, that we have inherent in ourselves, ways that we can take control of our own lives, and how we can recover our wellness. And so we're not recovering from something, but we are recovering for ourselves, our sense of power, our sense of control over our life, and our sense that we have a life that's really valuable, that we really love, that we're creating. And we're recovering a sense of wellness for ourselves. And what that looks like is different for everybody. So it's not like there's just like a specific finish line, like you're gonna learn how to parallel park or something like that, where we all kind of are going for the same outcome. Wellness is different for all of us, and we can use RAP to help us create wellness on our own terms. So Matthew, if you could jump ahead too, we'll skip over the tool slide since we just did that one. Thanks. So if we want to learn to build a RAP and how to use it for ourselves, we have a couple of different options. So we have the materials that come from my organization, Advocates for Human Potential, that were purchased from Mary Ellen Copeland when she retired, and then also some new materials that we've developed in partnership with the Copeland Center. But we also have other tools. We have an app that's available. And we have the evidence-based practice and the groups that are provided by the Copeland Center trained facilitators. And then we have the work that you want to do individually. So when we're building a personal RAP, we talked about the key concepts, we talked about the wellness tools, and then we use those pieces to build the actual parts of the plan. And when you attend an evidence-based RAP group, you're going to go through 8 to 12 sessions that are co-facilitated by 2 specifically trained and certified peers. And they're going to walk you through these different parts. So the first part is the daily plan or the daily maintenance plan. And that's the things that you need to do every day for your wellness, the things that you might want to do every day for your wellness or on some days. And it's also a look at what wellness really looks like for you. How do you know when you're doing well? What does that look like? Then we look at what are those stressors or triggers, those things that could happen that could threaten your wellness or throw you off track or just give you that ugh feeling, and how you might want to respond to it. Then we take a look at early warning signs, which are those signals that maybe there's something going on and we want to take some action to get ourselves back on track with our wellness and to feel better. And then we get into when things are breaking down. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of these in more detail when I throw it over to Waynette in just a minute here. We also create a crisis plan and a post-crisis plan. And then through the evidence-based practice, we take a look at some additional recovery topics. And those include things like self-esteem, motivation, lifestyle, and also some like mindset work to help us change some of those negative thoughts to positive thinking. Let's go on to the next slide. Waynette, would you like to jump in here and talk about values and ethics?
Sure.
Thanks.
So the heart of implementation of the evidence-based practice of RAP co-facilitation is in ethics. And for those of us that have been trained as facilitators, we know that through the values, and we put the values and ethics into practice, it actually brings the materials to life in all of our trainings. And trained co-facilitators are people who apply the concepts, values, and action plans to provide examples from their own lives. So, Matthew, next slide, please. I'm following along here. Okay, so we just want to give you a little snapshot into what these values and ethics are. Knowing that everyone is the expert on themselves and that there's multiple paths to wellness. It's based on self-determination and voluntary participation, rooted in the belief in equality, a mutual learning model, complementary with any lifestyle and any therapy that we choose. It's not based on any philosophy or model, but can incorporate any philosophy or model. And it focuses on participants and facilitator strengths, and we don't use clinical or medical or diagnostic language. So I love the values and ethics because the values and ethics truly introduced me to me and who I was at the time. And being a parent and the oldest of 15, and I've raised 21 kids, so therefore it was my role to be the expert on what's best for people. And as I came into doing this work, it opened up my eyes to that people are the experts on themselves. I don't know what's best for anybody in the room. People know what's best for themselves. And the best therapist in the world knows that the patients have the power. So as Kristen was talking earlier about, identifying what our powers are and taking back our power, we all have the solutions. We all have our own answers. And it's up to us as co-facilitators just to create space and an opportunity and an invitation for people to figure those things out for themselves. So participation being voluntary is really huge for me. There are some people that are mandated to go to groups. However, when they show up, participation is voluntary. I never know what people are going to take away from just being and sitting in the room. It's about mutual learning. I pick up information as I go along, and I learn so much more from people that are in my groups than they could ever learn from me. So I love standing shoulder to shoulder with people. The equality piece, there's no big I's and little U's. We stand shoulder to shoulder with people and going through this process of self-discovery. I love that it complements anything and everything that we do. I have a core group of supporters. We all have different belief systems. We all have different political views. We all just have different perspectives about life. And we can still come together and allow all those different perspectives to show up in the room as we're figuring things out. And it's not right, wrong, good, or bad. I love that someone in the chat box, I've been reading the chat box really and just like taking it all in, so I'm really marinating in it. And someone called out that, rap didn't solve their issues, but it did decrease the intensity. So, I don't want people thinking this is a cure-all or a fix-all, but that's my truth as well. I experience moments of unwellness, but rap helps me get back to wellness when it comes to chronic pain and those types of things that are going in the balancing the load of current events that are going on. I get to get back to and move towards a certain degree of wellness. And then I have to focus on my strengths so that I'm able to see other people's strengths. And I really learned that from Matthew I think it was about 10 years ago. I was like, what can I do better? What do I need to do better? And he's like, oh no, there's nothing constructive about criticism. I'm like, no, you need to tell me what I need to do different. And it was just an amazing process to spend my first week with Matthew when he came on board as executive director of the Copeland Center, and he held space and just kept reiterating to me that there is nothing constructive about criticism. And when you focus on what people are doing well, it builds up their strengths. So, yeah, that's amazing. I love that a diagnosis is not necessary to do this work because I don't have a diagnosis. However, I still get to do this work and apply these same techniques and strategies and tools in my life so that I can maintain balance and serenity. So, next slide. Oh, I love this. Rap is about a way of living and based on self-determination. This has truly become a way of life for me. Ideas that are generated from group discussions. Again, it's like to facilitate means to ease a process. We're not the experts in the room. We're extending an invitation for people to join us in this journey towards wellness. And I don't know what wellness is for anyone. I know how I define wellness for myself, but I can't define wellness for other people. So wellness is defined by the individual, not predetermined by anyone else. Empowered by voluntary nature and connection of shared ideas. Through this process, and I'd just like to invite you guys in, sorry, Matthew and Kristen, I'd like to invite everyone into just a little short activity, just really quick. It take like 2 minutes. And I learned this from a participant in a group last week. What I've learned about myself is I'm not taking time to breathe. I'm taking short breaths. So if everyone can join me just in taking 3 deep breaths and intentionally breathing and asking the mind to join the body in breathing. And as we take 3 deep breaths, if you choose to inhale, inhale calm, and exhale peace. So together, inhale calm, and exhale peace. Ask the mind to follow the body, as again we inhale calm and exhale peace. And one more time. Inhale all the calm you can and exhale peace. That's a wrap. Okay, great. So plan starts and that's this is what we do.
That feels so good.
Right?
Thank
And
you.
that the peer group is critical, right? It's critical to the engagement of whole health because the body's always breathing, but my mind doesn't follow. And I learned that from a participant. And it's really changed the way I start my day. So plans actually start from the person's life's goals, hopes, dreams, and interests, and not so much clinical targets. We just learn from each other. Thank you for those of you that chose to join in that exercise. Matthew or Kristen, do you have anything to add to this? RAP is about a way of living and based on self-determination.
I would just like to add that these values and ethics that we went over, and the concept here of self-determination, and that I wanted to add as we'll get into the evidence base, but the environment of peers working together and actually practicing things like equality, mutual learning, and that this was actually observed, and what was a key part of the fidelity measures for RAP. So, you know, as attractive as it is to just say, oh, great, tools and plans and concepts, it is essential that we breathe life into what made RAP evidence-based through the actual practicing of these values. And big way to practice is to model, right? Which is why I wouldn't dare get on and talk about this without co-facilitators, because we want to model what peers look like who are working together. And that's what we're doing here. And so I can't underscore enough in all the years of doing RAP, the importance of keeping this heart in it. And again, as you see from all the examples here, this is never a conversation about how we just manage symptoms in our lives, you know, let alone a particular health symptom like mental illness. This has always been holistic, and it's always a critical piece to it. And again, I know how attractive it can be to just take these concepts and tools and then say, let's help people with this, you know. And I had to also say that for me, it was transformative to go into the RAP workshop and experience this. But what really took it further for me was taking the facilitator training, which is learning how to practice those values in relationships with other people. And that's where my wellness went to whole new levels in my life, beyond just creating plans around a particular area of my life. So I just really wanted to underscore that. Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome. Thank you, Matthew. Oh, next slide, I guess. Kristen, do you have anything on this slide?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, great. So as Matthew just spoke to this about the keys to unlocking the implementation is peer support and self-determination. So the way that Copeland Center co-facilitator, how Copeland Center co-facilitator implements RAP is through a process that evolved out of 2 fundamental values that shift away from the traditional values of health treatment, particularly mental health. One is that people are the experts in their own recovery and wellness. And 2 is that people with shared experience can support each other effectively. And for me, the definition of peer is like providing everyone with essential and effective resources and services. So standing shoulder to shoulder with people again, I can't say that enough. Matthew, Kristen, anything on peer support and self-determination?
I would just say here that, again, it's really, in particular, it's really important that we understand that where this came from was empowering people to discover what works for them, to discover for themselves. And when people are used to systems where other people are always kind of telling them or essentially reinforcing that, oh, well, you didn't know that this was a problem in your life, sometimes it takes time to support people and hold the space for them to start to connect with what has worked in their lives and becoming an expert in their own lives. So, I've become more of an expert in my own life because of rap. I thought I was an expert in my life before I started going into the process, but with entering into a process with a group of peers around these values and ethics, I've discovered that I can become more and more an expert in my own life. So I think it's a really important thing because having worked both in a academic and professional setting, this notion that people actually know stuff for themselves and can discover solutions within themselves is not one that we've been particularly good at reinforcing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Nice.
agree. And I have I had like kind of an opposite experience than Matthew. I thought like I had no idea what I was doing. So it wasn't like I became more of an expert on myself. I realized that I actually have expertise. Like the beginning of my intentional wellness journey, I was looking for other people to tell me how to be well. And I thought that I had to have like wellness, like prescribed to me through some sort of like regimen that someone would like, okay, you're going to do this many jumping jacks or whatever. I don't know. But I was looking for other people to tell me what to do. But then when they told me what to do, it was like some stranger I didn't know who didn't know me. And it wasn't stuff I wanted to do. And it wasn't stuff that worked particularly well for me. So I was like, oh, well, I guess wellness isn't for me. And then the first time someone told me that I was an expert in my own wellness, I like argued with them that I wasn't. Like it was just such a weird concept for me. And so it was really amazing to have the community that introduced me to rap and then has gone on this journey with me to really hold space for me to figure out how to identify my own expertise and how to recognize that I brought those strengths to the table, because I didn't think I had it. And so that was a big shift for me. And it was that mutual sharing and that mutual support and the modeling of others that really has made that possible for me.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you, Kristen.
Next slide.
Yes, please.
All right.
I saw the little mouse down there. I thought you were... Okay, great. So Kristen, would you care to co-facilitate this process as we're modeling what co-facilitation looks like? And so the first part of RAP, the actual structure of RAP that has 6 sections, is the daily maintenance plan. And it's a simple structure for putting our wellness steps. So for me, I don't know about you guys, but no one had ever asked me what I feel like, what do I feel and look like when I'm well, because I have chronic health issues. And doctors always told me, you're never going to get better. It's always going to get worse. It's like my joints are deteriorating, right? And so as I came into RAP, it was a difficult process for me to think about wellness. It's like, okay, RAP's about recovering wellness back into my life, but physically I will never be well. And it took me down into this dark place. And then I had this aha moment and I was like, oh my God, when I am mentally, spiritually, and emotionally in wellness, it affects how I'm feeling physically. So it's like, oh, okay, there are these things that I do look like when I'm well. You know, I'm approachable. It's like I'm not snappy or misdirecting anger. I'm optimistic. I'm seeing the glass is half full and not half empty. I have a great sense of humor. I'm funny as all outdoors. So really that's what wellness looks like for me. Kristen?
Yeah, when everything that you just said, I was thinking to myself, oh, what does wellness look like for me right now? And I'm like, man, I'm funny. And
You are.
I'm also resilient. And when stuff comes up, I'm like, that happened. And I keep going. So that sense of humor and that resiliency are huge markers of wellness for me.
Nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't want to. Did I leave Matthew out? Matthew? You want to share?
I would probably say one of the key words for me would be calm energy. From my dear friend Carol Bailey Floyd, who was a part of the actual initial evidence-based practice of RAP study. But she used to talk about calm energy, and I've latched onto that description. Like that's it. That's where I want to be. I want to have energy, but I want to be relaxed. You know, like a wave. So
Nice. Thank you, Matthew. So the second list that we create when we're talking about daily maintenance is like, in retrospect, it's nothing new. It's like we've been doing this stuff all our lives. There's things that work for us. There's things that work well for us and things that work less well for us. But for me, I had to look at what are those things that are mandatory for me to do every single day, 7 days a week to be well. And there's 3 things that haven't changed in over 20 years. It's like I have to build on my own strengths so that you're not responsible for how I'm feeling. So I write a list of things I do well down, before I leave work and then also in my personal life. And that's self-validation. I must give and receive support every single day before 6 a.m. to get my day started. And the other thing I have to do is I have to decompress. So I love to play Soda Candy Crush, mindless little games, right? And those are just things that are deal breakers. If I don't do these things, I go down into a dark place. So I like to call it my mandatory to-do list. Kristen, Matthew?
Yeah, I have, it's funny, Waynette, so Waynette did my facilitator refresher in 2016, I think. And that was what inspired me to start a morning routine for myself. And like Waynette, if I don't do these things at the start of my day just doesn't go that great. So I need to read first thing in the morning. I need to write in my journal first thing in the morning. And I need to give myself some positive affirmations and reminders of who I really am. So when I'm walking into my day, I'm walking into my day with clarity on who I am. So I have that resilience and that sense of humor and that unmesswithableness. And if I don't do that, it really makes the day hard. So that's real important for me every day. And I also have to go to bed at a reasonable hour at the end of the day, or I'm a hot mess the next day.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you, Kristen. Matthew?
For me, some key things that have been on my list for a while now is I have to connect with my children and my wife. Taking a hot or warm shower, regardless of hygiene needs. It's just a very good space for me. And listening to some music. I can't go a day without listening to some music. It just makes such a big difference in my life. So yeah, there are 3 core elements on my list that have been on there for quite some time. Some things come on and off, but over the last 15 years. So
nice. Thank you, Matthew. Then the third thing we think about is, what are those things that are optional for us to do on any particular day? And these things are interchangeable. So for me, it's like I could go to a meeting, I could listen to music, I could talk to my kids. These are things that aren't going to make or break my wellness, and it's different for everyone. And where I thought eating healthy was optional, it's right now eating healthy is actually a mandatory to do for me. So they switch, right? Exercise is great, but it's not something that I have to do every single day. I have choices and options on that. So unless I'm trying to lose a whole lot of weight, then it becomes mandatory to exercise for 25 minutes, but not right now. So Kristen, Matthew.
Yeah, one of my options, and I used it yesterday, actually, I was having a hard time yesterday, is a long bath. Just a long hot bath. And I don't even have to do anything. There doesn't have to be bubbles. I just need to lay in the water. And there's just something about that for me that if I'm feeling really out of sorts, it reboots my system.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you, Kristen.
Some things that I need to do on occasion, or in particular as well. One, I had to get outside, and that's an important thing during these times to remember, and get outside with nature. So gardening, weeding, walking through the woods. Used to be the live music, go to a concert or a show. So the best I've done so far was I had some close neighbors and we kept some distance from each other, but I put a projector and everything outside, and I live streamed a live concert. But it's still not the same. So can't wait to get back to a live show and just feel those vibrations off the speakers.
Nice. Thank you, Matthew. So this is just, getting us to think about what are those daily minimum requirements that we have in our lives. So if you guys just start thinking about those things that are working in your life, it's like, oh, okay, great. I have this daily plan so that I can move through the day. Great. Kristen, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Maynette. And I'm going to invite both of you to continue co-facilitating and sharing things as we go through this section as well. And in the interest of time, I think we'll be maybe a little bit quick, but if I'm going too fast, I invite both of you to please slow me down. So the next part is looking at those stressors or those triggers. Sorry, the cat just got a piece of hair in my mouth. So for me, that's actually a great example. So we talked about earlier, these are those things that can kind of throw us off. They can maybe interfere with our wellness or make things feel a little shaky for us. We all kind of define them in our own way, but these are typically events or circumstances that occur that can kind of throw things off. And one for me is stuff touching my face unexpectedly. It makes me super uncomfortable and I have a really big panic reaction to it. And so I was able to just share with you my action plan. And my action plan is to name the thing that's happening. So in this case, there was cat hair stuck to my lip and it was freaking me out. And so I said, this is what's happening. And then I removed it. Sometimes it's, okay, my kid is really close to me and I'm just going to ask him or her to back up slightly and take a breath. So one of the things we do is we develop our wrap if we want to. Every part of wrap is optional, whether you choose to do it or not. I personally find this one really helpful, is we identify what some of those stressors or triggers are for us. So for me, unexpected physical contact, particularly near my face, is a big one. And that's something that, we might know is coming, we might not. And then there's other stuff like the anniversary of my brother's death is a big one. And so that I know it's coming, it happens every year. So I can plan for it and I can identify the things that I'm going to do to take care of myself on that day. And I can also identify the things that I can do if other stressors or triggers occur to respond in the moment. And so it could be things like Waynette's breathing exercise. It could be something I tell myself. It could be a way that I take a break to get away from that. It could be a request that I make of someone who's around me. So Matthew, what would you like to share about stressors or triggers and action plans?
Well, I mean, this is an aspect that applies to many aspects of my, work life, family life, but at the same time, and I need to be very cognizant of dehydration and those events and circumstances which might trigger my body to start to dehydrate. I get kidney stones, which, I might not notice until early warning signs or when things breaking down. So when the weather turns warm and I want to go outside and do my gardening more often, more frequently, I will start to dehydrate more quickly. Or when I do all day trainings, like my beloved facilitator and advanced level trainings, and I'm on my feet all day long and I'm drinking coffee. These events and circumstances are times where I need to really remind myself to drink more water. Water is medicine for me in this situation, preventative medicine. Actually, my good friend Eric Larson made me this picture. It's right behind me. It's called WRAP, Water Replenishment Action Plan. And he made a picture, wrote WRAP on it, put it in front of me during a training once because I didn't drink water all day. So sometimes it's great when supporters know your WRAP.
I love that. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah.
Wait, Nat, what about you?
I think one of the biggest triggers or stressors for me is when people cut me off on the freeway. or don't let me cross the street. I mean, triggers happen all around us every day, right? There's events and circumstances that I can respond to or react to, right? And what I've learned through this process is that I don't always have to react. I don't have to like follow people home or anything like that. And I can tell myself a story that I hope isn't true. Like, you know, they're trying to get to where they're going. They must have a sick pet or a sick child or a parent, or people are just trying to get to where they're going. I don't know what's going on in other people's lives unless I ask them and they tell me, right? So when those events and circumstances show up in my world that cause me discomfort, I really have to reflect and say, I don't know what's going on in people's lives. So, yes.
Thanks, Waynette.
Absolutely.
So then the next piece is to look at our early warning signs. And early warning signs are a little bit different from stressors and triggers. Early warning signs are the signals that we notice, and they can be things that we noticed. Like in the past, we've talked to these about internal signs, but they may not necessarily be internal. They may be things that we notice that we're feeling or that we're doing or that we notice in our environment that can cue us in that something is happening, but they're different from an event or circumstance that's sort of outside our control. So for me, well, actually, let me back up for a second. Early warning signs and when things are breaking down can overlap a little bit. And so like for me, one of my early warning signs is that I haven't slept well in 2 nights in a row. And a sign that things are breaking down, which is a clue to me that a crisis is kind of on the horizon and I want to do something to head it off. A sign that things are breaking down is if I haven't slept well 4 or more nights in a row. So there's like a level of intensity that happens that sort of differentiates it for me. And some people, you know, that might not be on their list at all. That might be normal for them. So, you know, it's very personal to what your circumstances are. Another early warning sign for me is that the hamper is overflowing. That's not something about me, but it's a visual indicator in my environment that I have started letting certain things go. And then a sign that things are breaking down is I'm out of underwear because the hamper's really overflowing and I have not been taking care of my living environment. And so when I notice those things, depending on what that thing is, I'll have a different action plan that I use to respond to it. Sometimes I might ask for help with the laundry, for example, because I realize I need a break. And, you know, I don't actually need to do the laundry. I might just need some help. Other times I'll decide to do it because it gives me a sense of accomplishment. So it really varies depending on who you are and what the thing is. Matthew, Waynette, what would you add about early warning signs and when things are breaking down before we move into crisis planning?
I would just add, like for me, the most notable sign is irritability, and catching it sometimes means hearing my own inner thinking, you know, being able to recognize in my head how quickly I'm going to kind of complaining in my head. I realize the source of that is an irritability with things around me. And that's usually a sign that I need better sleep or something's going on. And that's probably been the most helpful thing for me to learn about myself in particular. And I think what gave me the big motivation was how important my being well as a father was. And catching those moments, you know, in my head where it's like I'm being irritated with things I usually love that my kids are doing, like being happy and screaming and running around the house and having a good time. So, you know, sometimes, these are very subtle. And I think I'm being triggered or it's a stressor, but it's not. It's actually an early warning sign. And so, you know, figuring this stuff out for yourself takes time, and only you are inside your body. And but there's so much learning to be had there. That's what I found.
Thanks, Matthew. Waynette, what would you share?
Just the, you know, early warning signs for one person could be when things are breaking down for another. And when things are breaking down for one person could be an early warning sign for another. And for me, it rings true, right? Because it's like I've had these panic attacks too in the last 6 months. And it's like being overwhelmed, or nobody else knows I'm having these things. And I'm using my wellness tools. I'm doing deep breathing. I'm drinking water. I'm, you know, doing everything I need to do I'm asking myself, what am I looking forward to? Or what is it I'm in fear of, right? like when people don't let me cross the street or cut me off, whatever. What is that bringing up for me? I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, whoop, 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 all that great stuff. And then when it escalates, people can see the change in my behavior. As Matthew's talking about the irritability, you know, I can get snappy, grumposaurus, right? Misdirecting anger, saying things I can't take back. And then I've learned that through this process to let the professionals do their job, because I've had 2 heart attacks. So it's like, oh, a panic attack kind of feels like that. So if things are breaking down and my techniques, tools, and strategies that are in my wellness toolbox aren't working, I need to go to the hospital and let the professionals do their job. Does that make sense? But for some people, you know, the panic attack is an early warning sign. But, you know, for me, if it escalates and the situation is serious or dangerous, I probably need to go to the hospital and get checked out.
Thanks, Wynette. And that's such a great example of how it is really personal, right? And so someone else can't tell you, well, this is your early warning sign, or this is your sign that things are breaking down, or this is what a crisis looks like for you. We're going to talk about crisis next, because you know for yourself kind of where you are on the spectrum of wellness. And RAP is a way for you to dig into that to get more clarity about what that looks like for you and what actions you may choose to take to shift where you are on that spectrum. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And Wynette, I know that this is a section that I just love hearing you present. Would you like to take crisis plan?
You like hearing about my nail, huh? Nice. So the 5th part of RAP is the 5th section of RAP is the crisis planning. And part 6 of RAP is the post-crisis planning. So this is the part of RAP that we talk about, you know, what are our predetermined courses of action in the event that crisis shows up in our lives, right? We share this part of the plan with our supporters, not people that think they know what's best for us, not caseworkers or any of that stuff there, but people that we know will follow out our predetermined course of action, right? And this crisis plan is really defined by the individual. We can use this part of the planning process for any life issue, and it may include direction for our treatment and medical issues, right? It's always a plan that we choose. We know who's going to support us, what we need supporters to do, what we don't want done, and you know how the medical profession treats us. Now, these plans may inform an advanced director or a psychiatric advanced director, i.e. a PAD, which is a separate legal process defined by state laws and regulations. In California, we have if you sign it, if you create your crisis plan, you have it notarized, you have a durable power of attorney, and you have it signed in the presence of two witnesses, you can actually attach it to your advance directive, and it becomes part of your process. So for me, I didn't have a crisis plan for the first, I don't know, umpteen years that I was doing this work until they discovered a lump in my breast. So the story, you know, as Kristen's talking about these different 9 parts, there's 9 parts to the crisis plan. Next slide, please, Matthew. So as we co-facilitate this process between facilitators, we have this thing called a wellness assurance document, and it's like a mini crisis plan for co-facilitators in the event that we're on the road and something happens, right? And part 1 is like what I'm like when I'm feeling well. And I share the story about facilitating a process, being out of town, I'm well, I'm, you know, with my co-facilitator, we're in the values and ethics, people are engaged, and yeah, and then bam, my nail breaks. And my nails grow like really long. So when they break way down here in the quick. So anyway, me and Juwanza and BJ, we all in somewhere doing some training. My nail breaks and it starts bleeding. And that was an indicator that someone else needed to take over, right? I needed some of my co-facilitators to step in. And yeah. So part 2 talks about those signs or indicators that others need to like be involved in our care. Part 3 is supporters. Who are those supporters? Who is it that you want involved, and who are those people that you don't want involved? Then part 4 is like medication, supplements, and healthcare providers. Well, I'm out of town. I need a Motrin. I need some Tylenol. It's throbbing. It's bleeding. Help. Part 5 is treatments and complementary therapies. The treatment I needed was to get the nail fixed, right? Home community care, respite. Hospitalization is not always the best solution for us. So, when I'm on the road, it's a hotel is going to be my respite center. And then part 7 talks about those hospital or other treatment facilities that we prefer and those that we want to avoid, for the simple fact, if hospitalization becomes necessary, you may not want to be hospitalized where your coworkers are going to be coming in and out of your room all the time. Part 8 is help from others. What is the help that you need from others? We were out of town, GPS wasn't working. We had to actually pull over a police officer and ask where the nail shop was so I could get my nail fixed. And he actually he's like, well, there's an Ace Hardware store over there. I'm like, no, fingernail shop. So he actually escorted us to the fingernail shop. And then part 9 is actually inactivating the plan. When is it that your supporters can go home, or that you don't need the support that you previously needed? And for me, it's when I get back to part 1, what I'm like when I'm feeling well. And part 1 of this crisis plan, I want to call out that it's a little different from daily maintenance planning, because I'm approachable, I'm optimistic, I'm happy. And people that have been with me my whole life still don't know what happy means to me, because we all define it differently. So we have to expand on those adjectives we used in daily maintenance planning when it comes to crisis planning, so that people aren't coming in with preconceived notions about what our wellness looks like. And we have to have those difficult conversations with people and say, this is really what wellness looks like for me. So what happened for me is, again, I had a wrap plan for my nails and co-facilitating, and a crisis plan for that. And what happened for me is they found a lump in my breast. So it was about 4 years ago, they found this lump in my breast, and I was like, oh, I need a whole crisis plan, because I'm a whole person. So I had to revisit my crisis plan and redevelop it around what it looked like as they were removing this lump from my breast. So that brings us to post-crisis planning. In the post-crisis planning, there's 2 sections, right? There is issues to consider, like what got me into the crisis. Okay, when I broke my nail, I was moving too fast. I needed to slow down on the road. It's like I'm moving too fast. I done had 8 shots of espresso. Just slow down, girl. However, when it came to the lump in my breast, it was really important for me to know how I wanted to feel as I'm coming out of the crisis. I wasn't back to a place of wellness, but for me, I'm a person that needs to be productive every day, and I'm still unlearning that it's okay to just take a day off and take care of me. I'm still learning this at 52 years old. So the next day after the lump was removed, I was back to work. I'm on the laptop, the job. I was in corporate America. They're just not going to be able to make it without me. Needing to be needed, right? And I threw myself right back into crisis. I ended up with a hematoma, and my breast swelled up to my neck, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? I couldn't put the seatbelt on. And I ended up back in surgery 3 days later. So a timetable for resuming responsibility is really important. What is it that requires my immediate attention as I'm recovering from a crisis, and what can wait? And who's going to support me through that? That's what I learned. It was really a great learning opportunity. And then I got to look at, what's working in my current wrap plan, what parts of my daily maintenance do I need to tweak and adjust. So I made adjustments that fitted my needs for that time, and my daily maintenance plan looked a little different. So yeah, that's crisis planning and post-crisis planning at its best. Kristen, Matthew, anything to add?
I would just add that I was trying to think about how many different crises I've created a crisis plan and a post-crisis plan for, and I kind of lost count. there's lots of different ways that you can use this. Like I've had experiences of mental health crisis, but I've also had experience of medical crisis. I've had the crisis of bankruptcy. Like that was a huge one for me. And I was able to use this structure and this plan to adapt it to all of those different situations. And so while I may have like kind of a general plan, like if I'm unable to do the things that I want and need to do on a daily basis, this is how I'm going to handle it. But then I've also, made plans for specific situations that have come up, kind of like you were describing, Waynette. So I think it's one of the things I really enjoyed is being able to look at crisis more broadly than I had in the past and realize how helpful this is, because the crises don't feel quite so big anymore now that I know that I have a tool that can help me get through them.
Right. I'm going to plug the other stuff right now. So as we're doing this work with men in the prisons, which we've been doing for 12 years, we go backwards because the incarceration is the crisis, right? So as we're my husband and I co-facilitate this process to men that are behind the walls, this is where we start. Post-crisis planning, right? And then we're able to circle back to getting to a point of a different kind of wellness, right? Like, where are you going to go when you get out, and who's been taking care of things? Who do you need? What did you learn from the incarceration? What is your new daily maintenance plan look like going forward as you're being released from prisons and jails?
Well, Waynette, Kristen, I want to just briefly talk about the evidence-based study and then go to questions. So let me just underscore all of this with something that's not a little less fun, but that there were actually 3 randomized controlled trial studies done regarding RAP. The very first one basically showed, although we don't focus on symptoms and mental illness per se, we focus on whole health in the process and the values and ethics. The Dr. Judith Cook at the University of Illinois in Chicago conducted a randomized controlled trial study, which means basically this is like the highest rigor of social scientific study. And it means that they actually did a comparison. They had, don't quote me on it, but it was definitely close to over 500 people in the study. And they did a comparison. And that comparison showed that people did significantly improved their mental health, and in particular, less disruption of things such as anxiety and depression and increased hope and employment. There was another study that showed that, again, randomized controlled trial comparison study of people who were high utilizers of services, the people who sometimes we often think, well, they need a lot of support, they'll never have only so much independence, etc. The study showed that after people go through the 8-week, 2.5-hour sessions, delving into each part that we just quickly went over, that on the flip side of that, people who went through that process significantly decreased their utilization of those services like case management, therapy, etc., and reported a lower level of needing those services too. So the person's confidence in self-managing and their actual self-managing improved. And then the last randomized control trial study showed that people who went through this process of developing a RAP through a peer group environment increased their patient self-advocacy skills. And I won't get into the huge details about that, but they use patient self-advocacy scales that rated, and these are self-advocacy scales for all kinds of patients. And for different conditions, etc. So people had improved symptom outcomes. They needed services less, became more independent, and advocated better in their doctor's appointments. And that's notable because people who demonstrate this level of advocacy have overall better health outcomes. That's why we call this activation of self-agency for improved whole health outcomes, because that's what we have the evidence for. And it being a peer-based intervention, a peer support curriculum-based intervention is also a notable piece to this. So as came up earlier, by being a peer, we mean that you identify mutuality with others of actively using these plans to get well and stay well for whatever health issues you have. Yes, in these initial studies, the connection was strong because the facilitators, like us, identify with having mental health challenges and being in services for mental health. And that can always improve the connection and engagement for people. But it's also really good to have a diversity of experiences with health and life in using these plans. I'm going to just quickly mention that the stages of how this is rolled out is it's like yoga. When you're doing RAP, it's like you do yoga. You go to your own workshops, and you learn it with other people, and then you practice it daily before you go on to try to be a yoga instructor, right? So that makes sense. This is an experiential program. So people go through the full course, they develop these plans, and then they start doing it for themselves every day. And when they're proficient, they go on to become a facilitator, and that's a 5-day facilitator training. We have spread this work because the Copeland Center has done RAP groups, then we've trained facilitators, and then we've developed an advanced level, train the trainer. And that training is for people who have been doing RAP for a while, who then become a facilitator, run their own groups, and then take the course to train trainers. And that's a whole certification process of people, many of us who've been doing this for almost 20 years or more. So there are the stages, and you can find at our website, the Copeland Center, www.copelandcenter.com, information about training. We have a registry to find other facilitators and advanced facilitators. And you can go to Rapid Recovery Books, and you don't have to wait to get the training to get started. And it's often good before you even go into the training, get a book. I like RAP Plus book, but you can get the RAP book. You can get free resources there, videos. Begin to think about how you would apply this in your own life, and then join a group when you can. Right now, the Copeland Center exclusively provides a full online RAP group, which is not evidence-based yet, but we're actually working on a pilot and a study to see what evidence-based there is for interactive online groups as compared to the in-person too. With that, that's a wrap. Quickly went over the evidence base, and I want to allow just some time for questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen, Matthew, and Wayne. We do have a ton of questions around CEUs and slides and recording and how to become a facilitator. So real quick, Kristen just put in the chat box the link to the Copeland Center website where you can get information on becoming a RAP facilitator. CEUs are going to be available through NIAPers, and we'll ask that you fill out your evaluation that you'll get via email, the email that you registered for the event with. Fill that out within a week, and then we'll send you your CEU certificate within 45 days. And the slides and today's recording will be posted on the NIAPers website at www.niapers.org, which I've also put into the chat box. So I talked really fast, sorry, because I want to get to actual questions. So let me just start with this one. The first one should be a real quick one for you guys. Can you share the PEERS acronym again, providing everyone with ...
Waynette stepped away for a second. What I wrote down, because I liked that one too, was providing everyone with essential and effective resources and support.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm not sure that was exactly it, but it's close. Hopefully that helps.
I think that was the Waynettism, right?
Yes.
And the other question that just came in was, so RAP has been a great tool for more than 2 decades. How has it, or the ways it's been used, evolved in recent years? Are there any thoughts on further development moving forward?
Well, I think I would say that RAP in the lives of those of us who, starting with working with Mary Ellen and through the community, has, I mean, I have seen and heard stories where RAP has been used for all kinds of things when it's, presented and learned as a holistic tool. Over time, we've taken many of those stories and examples, and Mary Ellen has done variations of that. And AHP has really embraced, for example, translating and updating materials in Spanish, RAP with examples and stories from teens and youth. We took the essential core RAP materials, and with younger facilitators and high school coaches who were trained, we trained 3 different charter schools in Canada and these high school kids developed their plans, became facilitators, and ran groups like a club at their high school. So I would say that RAP has infinite applications, and AHP has been working diligently with the Copeland Center to get some of those initial materials that might engage audiences, but it's always designed in a way, and if it's facilitated, I mean, the key, I think, to facilitating for more aspects is building our diversity of facilitators who, like you heard today, if we had 3 other advanced facilitators on today, you'd hear slightly different approaches to it as well. So, but you can go to Rap Recovery Books. You can see that there are particular books in addictions and criminal justice system, people who have dealt with, going through the military veterans experience, family. So there really is a number of different applications. And what they really are is kind of an adaptation of the basic foundations we went over today, with stories and examples from the lived experience of people who have used it in these ways. Kristen, anything to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add is that, so HP publishes the materials, and we're always partnering with the Copeland Center to identify what will support people who are using RAP, what will support facilitators. And so RAP is RAP is RAP is RAP, but the materials that are available are evolving. So for instance, we totally overhauled the RAP app, and I put the link in the chat box. And so it's not really any different. RAP is still RAP, but there are different tools that might help you apply it in different ways in your life. So do I see RAP itself changing? Not really, because it's, it is what it is. But the ways that we use it and the ways that we share it and the different formats that materials may be available, we just relaunched and a totally new suite of Spanish language books. So we're constantly updating the content to make it more accessible, but the content isn't really changing that much. I hope that makes sense.
All right, I'm going to just jump in with the last question because I know we're over time, and I appreciate everybody hanging in there because we still have a ton of people on the line. Is there RAP for teens?
There is youth RAP. And so as Matthew was mentioning, there have been teens that have gone through facilitator training. They have run those groups in their schools, like an after-school club. And so I'll put that link in the chat box again, because I know it's moving really quickly. And so youth RAP would certainly, work in terms of RAP for teens. Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for attending today, and a special thank you to Kristen, Matthew, and Waynette. We love having you join our NIAPRS webinars, and we're so proud that you could help us present on this very important topic. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. We appreciate it, and we hope you all stay healthy and well. Take good care.
Bye. Thank you
for having us. Thank you, everyone.